Welcome back to the channel. RacerX here, and I am back with my good buddies at Bob Tom's Ford. These guys are actually in McKinney, Texas, right down the street from my house, so it was super convenient, and they actually have a very cool car that I want to compare to my Hellion twin-turbo Mustang. I cannot wait to show you guys this car. It's absolutely beautiful. I have some very interesting points I want to make about these two cars. It's the old thing about built versus bought. And so today we're going to talk all about it. Would you rather just buy something that's awesome right off the showroom floor, or would you rather build something that's awesome and just take your time with it? Today we'll talk all about it. If you're brand new to my channel, please do me a huge favor. Please hit the subscribe button that is located right down there in the corner, and we are off. So here are both cars directly behind me. As you can see, that is my Hellion twin-turbo Mustang, putting out easily 1,000 horsepower. And then, of course, right over here, you've got the Shelby GT500 Mustang. That is the baddest Mustang on the block. And what a gorgeous car that is. I cannot wait to show you more about it. Believe it or not, these two cars are actually very different. Yes, they look similar on the outside, but there are a lot of differences between these two cars, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So let's jump right into it. So the first and most glaring thing to talk about when you compare, obviously, this is a Mustang GT, this is a GT500, both of which are Mustangs. These are actually the same model year, believe it or not, as well. But $40,000, this was a base Mustang GT when it started life. And of course, there's been a bunch of money added to this car. We've added probably a good solid $30,000 to this car, but this thing is actually capable of making big time horsepower. There are twin 64mm turbos hiding underneath this. And there's a bunch of other goodies, driveline components. This is E85, so big fuel pumps, all that kind of stuff. Really made to go extremely fast in a straight line. When you jump over here, this thing bases out at about $80,000 and well equipped. One of these can jump well into the six-figure range. They do have a $17,000 track package that will go on one of these. That's actually not this one here. This is not the track pack car. I will point out some of the differences there, but there's a huge difference in sticker price. This one obviously bases out at more than double the money. So one of the first glaring things that you'll notice about these two cars, obviously the grille is very different. Those are aftermarket stripes here on the Mustang GT, but you can see the grille is actually quite nice. It's pretty simple really from the front. Both of these kind of have the menacing looking headlights. And then as we jump over here, you can see that we do have a very different looking grille indeed, a little bit more menacing. It almost looks a little bit more narrow, but opens up a lot more on the bottom than the Mustang GT does. And then of course, you do have your heat exchangers here, boom, right there and right there, where this car obviously typically wouldn't need that. As I know, we've got a lot of cooling bits on the Mustang as well. There's actually an intercooler right in here that's very hidden. This is a sleeper kit on this car, whereas this one, very purpose built. This is more of a track focused car, so very menacing looking from the front. And of course, there's more aero on the GT500 as well. You can see kind of right here, you've got a lot more downforce on this car, this one being a more track focused or road course focused car. This one is more of a drag focused car, and there not a whole lot of extra stuff on the aero that I've done to this car, so very big difference there as well. Now, as we look at the side of these two cars, yeah, the side profile is actually quite similar, but there are quite a few differences as well. For one, you can kind of see the aero on the Mustang GT versus the GT500. There's additional aero on the GT500. This one came with 18-inch little pizza cutter 235 tires on it. And of course, this one here has 305 Michelins in the front, and you get 315s in the rear. So certainly you're working with a lot more traction on the GT500. Like I said, this one makes a lot more power. And as you get to the rear of the cars, you can see this one's got a pretty understated spoiler. Now, I realize for you guys out there that are doing the performance pack cars and stuff like that, you do get a more aggressive spoiler here. The exhaust tips on a GT are not nearly as big. You can see this is the MagnaFlow X mod I have on this car, so aftermarket exhaust on this. And of course, I do have the big weld drag pack on this car, which this car needs for all that power. And then the back of the GT500 does look quite a bit different. Look at this big, beautiful spoiler that they give you on the GT500. I absolutely love this big badge back here that there's no mistaking, right, that this is a Cobra, a GT500. And of course, it has a really big quad exhaust system on the back of this, which actually sounds really good stock. I'm not gonna lie, the stock exhaust on this car actually sounds really, really good. So they do look slightly different from the back as well. A couple other quick differences of note. Obviously, you have your 5.0 badge on the side of the Mustang GT. On the side of the Shelby, you do get that beautiful Cobra emblem. And take a look at the brakes on the Shelby. They're absolutely massive. These are 16.5-inch rotors on this, massive 6-piston Brembos on this car. This is a very track-focused car, and you have to be able to slow all that weight down. And then, of course, here, much smaller, much lighter brakes on the Mustang GT. And there's about a 500-pound weight difference between the Mustang GT base and, of course, the Shelby GT500. This thing tips the scales at almost 4,300 pounds. You're at like 3,650 in this one. So this is actually a much lighter car. So if you're into drag racing, maybe that's something also to think about. The gearing in this car is also quite a bit different, as well as the transmission. The gears in this, the typical one will come with 315s. You can get an optional 355 in the Mustang GT. I believe this one comes with like 372 gears. And so this one has a steeper gear on it to help get that weight out of the hole. And we'll go under the hood in just a minute and I'll show you the power plants on these. But now as we look under the hood on these two cars, things change quite a bit. Two vastly different power plants on these two Mustangs. Of course, this is the 5-liter Coyote engine, 460 horsepower, 420 pound-feet of torque. We do know that they back the horsepower down ever so slightly on the 2022 Coyote, but a pretty simple power plant. As we know, this one is of course twin turbo, but it's a very hidden twin turbo system. They are undermount from Hellion, and this thing isn't just a sleeper, it is a super sleeper, because you can't even tell there's anything done to this car. Even the intercooler is concealed, as I mentioned. So a kind of a neat setup on this car. Like I said, it does make big power, but these Coyotes are very robust. They love boost, whether it's supercharging or twin turboed. That's why you see so many of these cars out there that have that. They will comfortably hold 10 pounds of boost and make big power. And you really can't say that about the Chevy and the Mopar engines. I mean, it's just a different deal. It's 4 valves per cylinder, dual overhead cam. Very nice engine. But when we jump over here to the Predator in the Shelby GT500, 2.65-liter Eaton supercharger sitting right on top here, which sounds absolutely fantastic. You're looking at 760 horsepower, and you're looking at 625 pound-feet of torque on this beast. A very efficient engine in this. There's a lot of low-end punch on this, which the Coyote really doesn't have. Even if you boost it, you know, you can get a little bit more on the supercharger down low. But the twin turbos just take a little bit of getting out of the hole, so you got to do some things to them. But this car comes out of the hole extremely well. You can see the intake on it is vastly different. 5.2 liters of American muscle right here, and it puts out great horsepower. So need I forget to mention this, but of course the Mustang GT still comes with a prop rod for the hood. And then of course, if you pay double the money for the Shelby, you actually get a strut inside here, which actually lifts the hood up for you. So hey, upgrades. And I do actually really love how they pull the heat out of the engine bay on the Mustang GT500. It really does look nice, and it really helps it stand out over the Mustang GT in itself. So I really like the aggressive hood they put on the GT500 as well. So the inside of the Mustang GT does have a similar look and feel to the Shelby. Obviously, as I mentioned, they are both Mustangs. This particular one being a base car, I did get the cloth seats in here. I'll probably change those over to race seats here very soon. You can see that beautiful steering wheel. That is not stock. That is from Dyna Performance. That is a carbon fiber steering wheel, which I absolutely love. And a lot of the other carbon fiber bits that you see in here, those are also from Dyna Performance. But this has the analog dash cluster up here, and the Shelby actually comes, it looks a little bit different than this, but a very neutral driving position in the Mustang GT. And of course, this comes with a 10-speed or a manual, but the 10-speed in this is really what makes these cars so fast. And that's really the big thing about the Mustang GT, is it comes with this fantastic 10-speed transmission. Let's jump over to the Shelby and I'll show you the difference. The inside of the Shelby is a really nice place to sit. First of all, you can see it's got this really beautiful kind of suede steering wheel here. Now, all of the Shelby cars are going to come with your digital dash. Now, you can get this in the Mustang GT. It's the 401A package. This is standard on the Shelby, but you can see the center section of this car does look a little bit different. It looks very similar here in the middle, but you do have, of course, the gauges here, which you would get like on a performance pack car. Down here, that is your DCT transmission, your dual clutch transmission. This is a 7-speed car versus the 10-speed car in the Mustang GT. The doors and everything else really look basically identical on this car, but check out these beautiful Recaro seats. So these are like a $1,650 option, but I mean, it is well worth it to get the Recaros. Beautiful emblem here on the back of the seats, and I absolutely love the Recaros in this car because they just really do hug you, and it has much more sporty kind of feel to it, and I really do like that. And of course, you can get the Recaros in the Mustang GT as well, but they do look just a little bit different. But a really nice place to sit and do business inside the Shelby. I love the carbon fiber that comes stock on this car that I had to actually put inside of the Mustang GT, in a really beautiful entertainment center, the infotainment center, I should say, right here in the center. Now, a couple other quick stats for you when you compare these two cars. As I did mention, this is probably the better, well-rounded car when it comes to just everyday driving, in terms of just, you know, more track focused, but you can run it on the road all the time. The interior noise really isn't off the charts, all that kind of stuff. It's just a really nicely put together car. And then of course over here, once you put all the modifications on this car, all the modifications to the suspension, the driveline, all the turbo stuff, all that kind of stuff, this car is actually pretty loud to sit in, and there's a lot of different creaks and noises that happen in a car like this. This one really is more of a drag race focused car. And of course, I don't know exactly how fast from the factory a Mustang GT is going to run. About 155 mile an hour is what it's limited to. This guy will go 180 in terms of where it's limited. Now, this one will probably go well into the 200s. I will probably never find out just how fast this thing is capable of going. But as I mentioned, there's been a lot of upgrades to this car to make it what it is. This thing, right out of the factory, is very impressive. They say it will run 3.3, 0 to 60, which is fantastic for a rear-wheel drive sports car. The quarter mile is really where it's at on this. At 10.7 is actually what they say this will run. And then, of course, from the factory, I'm guessing this thing is more like the 12.1 range, but as we know, this one is considerably faster in the quarter mile. That's really what this car was made to do, is go fast in the quarter, and there's more upgrades coming on this car. But a very capable car, just in stock form, and we see a lot of people do pulleys and all that kind of stuff on this car as well, and these things can get down into the 9s pretty readily with some work done to them. So now that I'm actually sitting in the Shelby GT500, I'll mention that it really does feel similar to my Mustang GT. I mean, at the end of the day, they are still both Mustangs. I did mention that the suede steering wheel and a couple other little goodies that you get on this. But in terms of like comparing this to, say, the inside of a performance pack car, it does feel very similar. Now, the thing is, they don't make nearly as many GT500s as we know. We see tons of Mustang GTs there everywhere. So if you're looking for more of a sleeper motif, the Mustang GT is really where it is at. This thing, there's nothing sleeper about this. I love the orange and black combination on this. Never been much of an orange guy, but I absolutely love the way that this car looks. It looks fantastic. So the orange and black on this car, it just works really well. But they have a lot of colors. The red and black, one of my favorites, works really well. But there's really not any ugly colors on the GT500. It is just a really good looking car. So, but there's not any sleeper status when it comes to a GT500. You see one of these going down the road, the big Cobras on the side, the sound of it, all that good stuff. You just know when it is. And I actually want to go ahead and start it for you really quick. That sounds pretty darn good for a stock exhaust. It sounds very beefy and a truly capable engine under the hood of this. I'm going to go ahead and take it for a little spin and talk about a few other quick things. So before I get too far down the road, I'm actually going to change up my exhaust a little bit on this. I can do quiet, I can do normal, I can do sport, and I can do track. So I should probably do track. Why not, right? And of course, now I can select my drive modes as well. So I feel like maybe we'll just do track on the drive modes here as well, just to kind of even everything up. I love the digital dash display that climbs up. So let's go ahead and head down the road. So getting to drive this for just a couple of minutes, I can already tell you that the low end punch on this thing is really, really nice. I mean, it comes out, it's really nice and smooth, the pull on this. It doesn't feel overwhelming like a sledgehammer, say like a Hellcat does, even though this puts out a little more horsepower than the standard Hellcat. Even the red eyes, I mean, they feel like a sledgehammer when you drive them. This has a very linear pull, but it definitely feels like it gets out of the hole really nice. Listen to it. Oh my goodness, it sounds good. Really good. Now the turn in on this car for a 4,200 something, almost 4,300 pound car actually feels really good. You can feel that the MagneRide shocks in there kind of doing their thing. The ride on this is actually very pleasant. Even though that exhaust sounds really good and robust, it's not overwhelming. I can still have a conversation with the person next to me. So there is some kind of a button down factor to this that I actually really do like. It doesn't feel like a race car. So the inside of my car does feel just a little bit more like a race car. So has a little bit of a nice quality to it, like a GT type quality to it. Not a ton of bells and whistles in this. Mustangs have never been known for that, but in terms of being comfortable and nice to drive, it is that. Now the DCT transmission in this is quite good, and of course we know a dual clutch transmission is kind of a little bit more advanced than what comes in the 10-speed in the Mustang. The 10-speed though, it is still really good, and it does, you know, it feels really busy. And if you're not used to a 10-speed in the Mustang GT, you're kind of like, why does this thing shift so much? But that helps keep that smaller displacement V8 in the power band. This one a little larger on displacement, and then of course you have the positive displacement supercharger helping you out. So the 7-speed is more than adequate with this car, and when you go to tip into it in this mode, it definitely gets down. Listen to it. Yeah, the GT500, it is a very unique, it is a special car. You know, it is a joy to drive this car. It looks good. You get a lot of attention on the road. I'm seeing people check the car out like crazy, and everybody pulls up right next to it. They look at it. You don't see that many on the road. So they do make a true statement. Just kind of a well-rounded car that's a lot of fun to drive, that sounds good. Not a lot to complain about with the GT500. You know, like 10.7 in the quarter mile. I mean, there's nothing to sneeze at when you talk about running 10s directly from the factory. And as I mentioned, with some pulley work and, you know, go to E85 and some stuff like that, these cars will readily run into the 9s. And of course, you know, we know the Coyote does really well with boost. Obviously this engine is made for boost, and it's really interesting to compare those two engines, because a lot of people say, well, look, just strap a supercharger on a Coyote and you're faster than a GT500. And there's some element of truth to that, but you have to take this car for everything that it is. It's the suspension, the specialness, all of those kinds of things, you know, the Shelby nameplate, the way it looks. I mean, you get a lot more than just slapping a supercharger or a twin turbo to this. You get a lot of heritage and a lot of other really cool goodies that you don't necessarily think about with the Mustang GT. So now I'm actually sitting in my 1,000+ horsepower Mustang GT. And as we know, I've got two big twin 64mm turbos tucked up underneath this thing, a really nice turbo kit from Hellion, and of course, a lot of other goodies on this as well. It's E85, triple pump fuel system on this, and you've got all sorts of driveline bits, shocks, all the kind of stuff to make this thing work. But it is not as refined as the Shelby is. Yes, it's a much faster car, and truth be told, if I were to throw maybe a short block at it and also a transmission, a built transmission at it, this car as it sits right now could probably make 1,400 horsepower pretty easily with everything else I have on the car, and probably still be out the door for about the same price as the Shelby. So it just really depends. Do you want a really well sorted, you know, car that's just you know, has some GT type quality to it, that's very, very unique and has some specialness about it, or do you want something that's just an all-out freaking missile, which is what this thing is? It really just, like I said, it depends on who you ask. Now, why the Shelby might be the more formidable car down low, and obviously, like, that's without me activating like a two-step or putting a different converter in the car, both of which I probably will do. This thing is good from a highway roll. For example, can kind of see, as missile-like as this thing is, it is pretty loud on the inside. Kind of got a bunch of squeaks and stuff going on behind me, and like I said, this thing runs on E85. The Shelby runs on 93 octane, which you can find everywhere, so certainly some advantages to that as well. The ride on this one is a little bit more rough because all the drag race goodies I have on it. Shelby ride's really nice. So like I said, there's no right or wrong to it. Just depends on how you want to set up your Mustang, and you know, that doesn't mean the Shelby necessarily better either, just different. So there you have it. It really depends on who you ask. Would you rather build something that's extremely fast and kind of go through all the growing pains and all that kind of stuff to make a car like this really fast? Or would you just rather buy the Bad Daddy right out of the box? It really depends on your budget and kind of your car goals, all that kind of stuff. But both of these cars at the end of the day will put a magnificent smile on your face. You'll have an absolute blast in both of them. Really, like I said, it's built versus bought. Which one would you prefer? Let me know in the comments down below, guys, and I will catch you on the next one. So until then, RacerX.